Great panel. Joining me now, Gemma Tognini on the desk.
Hello, hello.
Good to see you, Gemma, and Caroline Di Russo, host of the Royal Report, joining us from the wonderful city of Perth. It's all happening in the West just at the moment. You've got the federal cabinet over there. This border protection thing, I had my say at the top of the program. Here's what Peter Duttons had to say.
It's inconceivable that a boat of this size, carrying 40-plus people, could make it to the mainland without there being any detection. And the Prime Minister carried on with some stupid story about his phone not working in the car and he couldn't be contacted. He was caught completely by surprise. You've got a Prime Minister who is asleep at the wheel. You've got a situation where Labor doesn't believe in Operation Sovereign Borders.
Well, there you go, Caroline. He's the opposition leader. Is this a security failure? Is this a border protection issue? Or, as the Prime Minister would have it, it's just people playing politics?
Yeah, I know that's what the Prime Minister really hopes has happened, but I don't know how you cut that much out of something like our defence of our border to the north, and you get rid of temporary protection visas. You pretend it's all the same. You know, oh no, we've still got Operation Sovereign. Well, you've got 2/3 of Operation Sovereign Borders. Let's not get too excited. I don't know how you have major policy and budgetary changes to something like that. And then when something goes wrong, you go, oh, well, it's the other side's fault for bringing it to everyone's attention. Well, those things were working. Just leave them in place. And I know that's really hard for Labor to do that. But the last time they stuffed around with that policy, like you talked about at the top of the show, it was an absolute disaster.
Yeah, look, clearly there's a failure here. You can't ignore the failure. You can't pretend away two lots of people getting to our mainland, yet the Prime Minister says this.
Peter Duttons needs to stop acting in such an irresponsible, opportunistic way in trying to seize some short-term political advantage in a way that just does not promote Australia's national interest.
Riddle me this one, Gemma. Why is it Peter Duttons' problem? Why isn't he instead saying we're going to beef up our surveillance?
Because the Prime Minister hasn't worked out yet that he's the Prime Minister.
Yes.
Truly, I'm not being tried about it. This Prime Minister feels like and acts like and speaks like someone who's still in opposition, like nothing's my fault, not my problem. I'm going to my government's going to cut 1/3 of resourcing to this program, but it's not my fault. I mean, Scott Morrison was the guy who was lambasted for not holding a hose. Yeah. This Prime Minister says, can't take a call, I'm in the car. I mean, come on. Let's be honest here. This is a problem, and it's not just a problem for the Prime Minister in this portfolio. It's a problem for the Prime Minister's leadership. It's weak, it's directionless, and it's undefined.
Yeah, we'll keep on that. I think it's an important point. He just has to accept the authority of the job and do something on this and other issues. I want to go to Parliament House and the drinking culture. You might have seen this from Liberal Senator Peter Duttons.
The arts would come in and it would be this is what we're saying.
Well, I called a Liberal Nationals, not a coalition senator there from New South Wales. Now, Caroline, she looks half cut to me. Why don't you just front up and say, I had a bit too much to drink, let's move on?
Well, look, she has said that she has had a couple of drinks. I haven't seen the whole of the footage, but, from what people have said about the remainder of the questioning at that time, she appeared to be more lucid than in that spot. Look, as someone who occasionally trips over their own words... Yes,
but that's not a surprise, right? Some of us are at our most lucid when we've had a few drinks.
Yeah. Well, as someone who's not much of a drinker, I kind of want to, steer clear out of this because I don't want to be a wowser at the same time. I think people just need to be responsible. But the thing that I find ironic about this whole conversation is when you look at this issue and you talk about the culture within Parliament House and the people who, are shouting down about drinking in Parliament House, often they're the same people who want to, decriminalise drugs. And you're in somewhere like the ACT where they're like, sure, you can sit out the front and smoke meth, but whatever you do not have a wine before an inquiry.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Spot on. But I'll tell you, I think Peter Duttons handled this reasonably well. As you said, she said she's had a couple of drinks and on she went. We can all make up our own minds. We can all see what she said. But her leader, David Littleproud, said this.
Perrin Davies has admitted she had a couple of drinks, but she was not drunk. She was fully coherent in terms of the questioning that she put forward. It was a long day, and I think we all slur our words from time to time, and I think this is a bit of an overreach.
Not drunk, fully coherent, too tired. I mean, why is he making these foolish excuses?
I don't know. All I know is that there are some days where I'm genuinely too tired to function. And I think you've probably been on the receiving end of some of my messages on days like that. But look, I totally agree with what Caro said. I'm on a furious unity ticket there. The ACT and more broadly, you know, these people who want to ban everything. But Australian workplaces are mostly dry. Like if you go anywhere in a corporate environment, typically they're a dry environment. Maybe a drink with lunch if you're at a corporate function, that sort of stuff. I haven't been to a boozy corporate function, and mind you, I avoid them like the plague because I'm fundamentally antisocial for stuff like that. But the reality is most of us are dealing with an environment that there is an accepted set of behaviours. And I don't see a problem with beginning to look at federal parliament like a workplace that anyone else in Australia would have to go to and behave accordingly. Yeah, I think they could look at that very clearly, because there's a difference between the working environment there and the functions. And I know people move between the two, but you can go easy on the grog when you're actually turning up at some of the parliamentary procedures. I want to stick with politics, but go to the West today. And the Prime Minister in Western Australia today was confronted by this front page on the West Australian newspaper. It is demanding a pledge from the PM that he's going to keep their generous GST deal. And then we see at the press conference, when he's asked about this by the reporter there, Albo says he should tattoo the pledge on his arm. He writes it on his arm for him and says it should be tattooed there. Now, this is all a bit of fun for the Prime Minister, Caro, but doesn't it just underscore the point that his word is no longer his bond?
Shock horror, Chris. Who knew? Who knew? And look, the thing is, look, we have seen in the last couple of polls that have come out that the decline for the Labor government has been arrested. I don't think they've got necessarily the bounce that they were perhaps expecting in relation to their backflip on stage 3. But it has just mean that their word for everything else means absolutely nothing. So when Labor was here campaigning for the last federal election, they said that they were going to stand up for WA. And so far what they've done is they have delivered us IR policies which are so anti-industry, anti-productivity, anti-business. They've delivered us a bit more PRRT. There are higher income earners here in WA, but they're people who are doing all right at the moment because the state's doing all right. They're people who, if things like nickel and lithium and God forbid there's a little bit of a downturn in the iron ore price, they're all of a sudden not doing quite all right. They're not the rich people the Prime Minister would like to think that they are. So he's so far he's milked us for all that we're worth, and now he wants to tell us that his word is his bond on his GST. Well, West Australians, we're pretty parochial and we're not stupid. Yeah, you're pretty parochial. You're virtually a separate country, as we found out just a couple of years ago. Just quickly, I've got to show you these pictures. You would have seen them. Shield your eyes if you're offended by too much male flesh. But here's Australian Olympian equestrian Shane Rose. This is a fancy dress event, and he's very humorously put on a mankini to do it, and yet he was under threat of being expelled from the Olympic team because this was too offensive to some people. Let's have a listen to what Shane had to say.
Something I haven't worn before, and it's not the most comfortable attire, and I can't see myself wearing one in the near future. No. Luckily, I've got a great saddle sponsor, and my saddles are really comfortable.
Oh man, talk about bareback mountain, brokeback mountain. That would have been a bit rough on the buttocks, I reckon, as our equestrian expert. Now this looks like the death of Australian humour, but I can give you the breaking news that the Olympic Committee have said it's okay. They've dismissed the complaint. He can ride on, mankini or not.
She has prevailed. Look, I'm very happy to be the Sky Network's resident equestrian reporter and commentator, and I can say from experience that the chafing that man would have subjected himself to during that. Notice he's got a saddle pad over the top of his saddle. You don't usually have one of those. He deserves it all. And seriously, Equestrian Australia, get a grip. I understand one person complains.
Yeah, but at least we all had some fun around the country. But yeah, get a grip. They should have dismissed
right on,
it.
Shane Rose.
right on, butt cheeks and all. Thanks for joining us, Gemma and Caro. We'll catch you again next week.